I used to wonder if they'd notice if I left the room, not in a dramatic way, not with yelling or doors slamming. Just gone. Quiet. The chair pushed back under the table, lights turned off behind me. Would they say my name? Would they ask where I went? Or would they just shift like I was never sitting there to begin with? That house had 4 people in it, but only 3 were ever really part of anything. There was my father, Richard the provider, the voice that settled every debate even when it shouldn't have. My mother, Janice, all control, and no softness, always trying to fix the family's image, but never the damage. And then there was Chase, my younger brother by 3 years, golden loud, always forgiven. He made mistakes and got second chances before the first ones even ended. And me, Claire, 26, still at home, working 2 jobs, doing the grocery runs, folding the laundry no one noticed had been done. They didn't hate me. I wasn't the black sheep. I was just background. Like wallpaper in a room you walk past every day but never remember choosing. Every now and then, I'd try to insert myself. A joke at the dinner table, a question about their day. But I always got the same look from my mom, like she'd heard something buzzing near her ear and wasn't sure if it was worth swatting at. So I went back to the dishes, or my room, or my shift at the pharmacy. Some people say you can't miss what you never had, but I think that's only true when you haven't spent your whole life watching it just out of reach. And in that house, love was a room I was allowed to clean but never sit in. Chase didn't mean to become their favorite. He just was. He was the kind of boy who made a mess and got praised for being creative, the kind who forgot homework and was told he had a different learning style. He once knocked over a lamp, blamed the cat, and my dad laughed so hard he nearly cried. When I asked if anyone would help clean up the glass, my mom said, "Claire, you know Chase didn't mean it. Just pick your battles." That sentence stayed with me for years. Pick your battles. Like wanting someone to take responsibility was too much to ask. I used to think maybe if I were louder they'd notice me more. But I was never built for noise. I was steady. Got B+s. Refilled the prescriptions, made my own birthday cake one year when they forgot the date. The closest I ever got to being seen was when Chase got in trouble and I didn't. Then it was, "Why can't you be more like Claire?" But it was never meant as a compliment. It was a threat, a measuring stick. And Chase never had to measure up, because I was the one expected to bend. Last winter, Chase wrecked the Corolla. It was the car we shared, but I was the one who paid the insurance. He had been drinking. He lied about it. My dad covered it. He told me he's still figuring things out. You were always the responsible one. Like, that excused it. I remember standing in the garage that night staring at the dented hood, my breath turning white in the air. And all I could think was, why does being good only matter when it's useful to them, Janice? My mother used to say I was reliable. That word sounded like praise when I was younger. Now it felt like a tool description. Durable. Predictable, replaceable. Once I asked her if she ever worried about me, about how tired I looked, how much I worked. She barely looked up from her laptop. "Claire, you're not like Chase. You always land on your feet." But what she didn't see was people who always land on their feet. They learn to fall quietly. They don't cry. They don't yell. They just fold. And one day, they stop standing back up. It was a Sunday night when it happened. One of those evenings where the house was dim and quiet, but not in a peaceful way. The kind of quiet that hums with avoidance. I had just finished an 8-hour shift at the pharmacy. My feet ached. My shoulders felt like they belonged to someone twice my age. All I wanted was a cup of tea and 20 minutes without conversation. When I walked into the living room, Chase was there, of course. Sprawled across the couch, socks on the coffee table, the TV flashing colors across his face as he played another game that required 0 consequence. I didn't say anything at first. I just walked past him, but then I saw it my backpack. Dumped out across the rug like someone had shaken it loose. My notebook's open pages missing. Torn out. Crumpled. I bent down slowly, my fingers tracing the ripped edge of a page I'd spent 3 nights perfecting. Med-term prep dosage charts, handwritten case notes from work. Chase. I said not loud, but sharp enough. He didn't even look up. Needed paper, he muttered, thumbs tapping the controller. Took some. Where is it? He shrugged. Trash, probably. I stood up, heart heavy in my chest. That was my study guide. I had patient notes in there. I stopped because I knew he wasn't listening. Finally, he looked over his shoulder, lips curled in that lazy half smile he always wore when he knew no one would hold him accountable. Relax. It's just paper. That sentence, those 3 words, landed harder than they should have. Maybe because I realized he meant it. Maybe because it was how he saw me, how they all saw me. Just paper. Something to be used, discarded, replaced. I picked up the torn pages in silence and walked toward the kitchen. I didn't say anything. Not because I had no words, but because I already knew none of them would land. Right then, my parents walked in from the garage. They were laughing. Richard had probably told one of his stories from college, the kind he only shared with Chase. Janice's hand was still holding onto his arm. They looked like a real couple, a real family, until they saw me. "What's with the face?" Richard asked, his smile already fading. I held up the notebook, fingers shaking. "Ask Chase." He tore up my notes. "Just threw them out." Janice glanced toward the living room, barely blinked. "It's just paper, Claire." Chase echoed her from the couch. "Yeah, just paper." And that was when I felt it, that slow, tightening pressure behind the ribs. Not rage, not grief, just something pulling loose. A quiet thread beginning to snap. I didn't say another word. I just turned around, walked past Janice and Richard, and headed for the stairs. If they weren't going to deal with it, neither was I. But then my father's voice followed me. "You know this attitude, it's exactly why no one wants to be around you." I stopped. I turned back slowly, 1 foot still on the first step, like some part of me hadn't committed yet, like maybe I'd misheard. "What did you say?" Janice let out a sigh. The kind mothers use when they're tired of repeating themselves, though I couldn't remember the last time she'd said anything I actually needed to hear. "Claire, you always make a mountain out of nothing. You blow things up, overreact. Just let it go for once." My jaw clenched. "Let it go. You let him destroy something that mattered to me, and you're telling me I'm the problem." Chase chuckled from the couch. "God, you're so dramatic." I looked at all 3 of them, the way Richard folded his arms, the way Janice's eyes flicked to the floor like even she didn't want to be in the room anymore. The way Chase leaned back, arms behind his head like a king in his living room throne. I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't thrown anything. But they looked at me like I was dangerous. "You act like I'm difficult," I said, my voice steady now, too steady. "But you don't even see what's happening. You let him walk all over me, and when I speak up, I'm the problem." Richard's tone flattened. "Because he's not the one always complaining. That one hit hard, but not as hard as what came next." Chase tilted his head, gave that little smirk again. Then, like he was offering a casual observation about the weather, he said, "We don't need you here." Silence. That's all there was. No gasp from Janice, no correction from Richard, not even a chuckle to say, "Come on, that's too far." They just stood there. Didn't blink, didn't flinch, didn't disagree. Richard looked down at his watch. Janice shifted her weight like her feet hurt. Chase picked up the controller again. And that was it. That was the moment. Not a knife, not a shout. Just that cold, casual sentence, and the way no one thought it needed correcting. I didn't argue. I didn't scream. I didn't demand they take it back. I just breathed. Something in me, something I had spent 26 years holding together, let go. I walked up the stairs without a sound, packed a duffel bag with the things that were mine. Not much. A few clothes, the charger, my license, a ring from my grandmother they always said would go to Chase, but she had slipped it into my hand before she passed. No one followed me. No one knocked on the door. I walked back down the stairs, past the living room, past the people who raised me but never saw me. And as I reached the front door, I heard the TV turn back up. That was the last sound I heard in that house. I didn't have a plan. I drove for an hour without music, without a map, just the low hum of the highway and the sound of my own breath tight in my chest. Somewhere around 9:30, I pulled into a neighborhood I hadn't seen since college. Melissa, a friend I hadn't texted in months, opened the door in pajama pants and blinked twice. Then she just stepped aside and said, "You want tea or a blanket?" No questions, no lecture, no guilt. I chose the blanket. That night, I slept on her couch like it was the safest place in the world. Not because it was soft or quiet, but because no one in that space expected anything from me. Not to be calm, not to explain, not to apologize. When I woke up the next morning, the sun had barely broken through the blinds. My phone was buzzing on the coffee table. 12 missed calls. 4 from Richard, 3 from Janice, 5 from Chase. I stared at the screen like it belonged to someone else. Last night they couldn't look me in the eye. Now they couldn't stop trying to reach me. I didn't answer. I just sat there watching the notifications keep coming. A voicemail, a text, another call. Melissa handed me a mug of tea and raised one eyebrow. Family stuff, I nodded. She didn't press. She just sat beside me and waited like people do when they've been through it too. By noon, the calls slowed. The texts started instead. First one, from Janice. You're being immature. Come home. Then, Richard. Enough of this nonsense. This isn't how adults behave. I almost laughed. I had walked out without yelling, without slamming a door, and they still called it a tantrum. They didn't miss me. They missed the help. Then another text came in. Just 5 words, from Janice Clare. Come home, it's serious. That one hit differently. It didn't sound like guilt tripping. It sounded scared. I waited. 5 minutes. 10. Then I typed back, what happened? Her reply came almost instantly. It's Chase. He screwed up. Bad. And just like that I knew. They didn't want me back because they'd changed. They wanted me back because they had a problem. I didn't reply right away. I just stared at the screen until Melissa leaned over and said, You okay? I nodded slowly. They want me to come back. Something's wrong with Chase. Melissa didn't ask what he'd done. She just said, You want me to drive? I almost said no. But then I looked at my phone again at the words he screwed up. Bad. And I realized I didn't want to help. I just wanted to see it. See the panic. See what happens when the golden boy runs out of gold. See what they look like when they need the one they pushed out. Yeah, I said. Let's go. It took 15 minutes. The drive felt faster than I expected, like the road had been waiting for me to return. When we pulled into the cul-de-sac, the house looked the same, but everything around it felt wrong. The porch light was on in the daytime. Richard was pacing in wide, anxious circles. Janice sat on the steps with her head in her hands. No laughter, no eye contact, no control. For the first time in my life, they looked small. I stepped out of the car and walked up slowly, hands in my pockets, shoulders steady. No one said hello. Richard was the first to speak, voice sharp with tension. Where the hell have you been? I tilted my head. Not here. Like you wanted. His jaw tightened. Before he could reply, Janice stood up, her eyes red and swollen. Claire? It's Chase. I waited. He stole from the wrong people at that arcade he hangs out at. We don't know all the details yet, but someone called the cops. He's being held. They say it might go to court. I folded my arms. And what does that have to do with me? Janice hesitated. We need money, bail, a lawyer, something. We need your help. There it was. Not we miss you, not we were wrong. Just we need. I looked at both of them, really looked. The people who taught me to disappear unless I was useful. And now here they were, digging through the rubble of their golden child, trying to find a way out. Let me get this straight, I said quietly. You told me I was unwanted. You stood there while Chase said I didn't belong. And now that he's in trouble, I'm suddenly family again. Richard rubbed a hand down his face. This isn't about all that. This is about Chase. He needs help. Janice's voice cracked. Please. We can talk about everything else later, but right now, we need to get him out. I paused. How much bail is $10,000? We can pay part, but we need you to cover the rest. I nodded slowly. 10 grand. Their eyes lit up, hopeful, desperate, relieved. And then I said it. Absolutely not. Janice flinched. Richard looked like he'd been slapped. Excuse me, he barked. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't flinch. Not my problem, I said again. Janice reached for my arm. Claire, he's your brother. I stepped back. No, he's your son, and I'm the one you made clear doesn't belong. Richard stepped forward, anger simmering beneath his calm tone. You think you're proving something? You think this is fair? I met his eyes. No, I think it's overdue. Janice's voice cracked. We'll pay you back. We just need help right now. We can't do this without you. I didn't answer. I wanted to watch them sit in it, let the silence stretch, let them feel what I've felt for years. Then finally I spoke. I'll consider helping, on one condition. They both looked up. Anything, Janice whispered. I want a public apology, in the family group chat, a real one. No excuses, no soft phrasing. I want you all to write out every way you've pushed me aside, and I want you to thank me for helping. Word for word. No shortcuts. Richard scoffed. You're being petty. No, I said, I'm setting terms. Just like you always did. It took hours, but eventually the group chat lit up. First from Richard. We need to talk about how we've treated Claire. We've made mistakes. Then from Janice hesitantly, we realize now how much we've hurt her. She's an important part of this family. We are grateful for her help. Chase's message came last, and it was the most forced of all. Sorry for being a jerk. Appreciate it. I stared at the screen. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel moved. But it was something. I sent back a thumbs-up emoji. That was all. They waited. And waited. But I never sent the money. Because I wasn't part of the group anymore. They could type whatever they wanted. But I knew the truth. Words cost nothing, and they were still cheaper than I deserved. The next morning, my phone rang again. I knew that number. Correctional facility. County lockup. I let it ring once, twice. Then I picked up. You really gonna do this to me? Chase's voice was low, sharp, threaded with disbelief. I didn't say anything at first. I thought you were better than this, he added, like it was meant to shame me. I leaned back on Melissa's couch, staring at the ceiling. Better than what Than leaving me here. Than letting them fall apart. I almost laughed. You mean like you all left me? Like when you tore up my work and said it didn't matter? When you told me no one needed me? He didn't answer. I waited. Then I spoke quiet but clear. I thought about helping. I really did. But you, Richard Janice, you've made it very clear that I'm only useful when you're drowning. We didn't mean it like that. But you did. I cut in. And now I believe you. The silence on his end wasn't angry this time. It was tight, bare, like he didn't know where else to go. You're really just gonna leave me here? I closed my eyes, took a slow breath. You said you didn't need me. I'm just agreeing with you. Before he could respond, I whispered one last thing. Enjoy your stay. And then I hung up. No slamming, no rage, just the soft click of letting go. That night, I didn't check my phone. Melissa and I ordered takeout Thai extra noodles. She let me choose the movie, even though I barely watched it. At some point, I realized I was smiling, not because of what happened, not because I'd won, but because for the first time in years, no one needed anything from me. No errands, no guilt, no rooms I had to tiptoe through trying not to take up too much space, just quiet. And noodles. And a couch that didn't sigh when I sat down. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel powerful. I felt light. Like I'd taken off something heavy I didn't even know I was wearing. Later, as I sat by the window watching a streetlight blink over the sidewalk, I thought about how peace feels different when you're not performing it. When you're not trying to show anyone you're okay. It doesn't look like revenge. It doesn't sound like a clapback. It just feels still. My phone buzzed once, then again. I didn't reach for it. Let them wonder. Let them spiral. Let them find someone else to balance the pieces Chase broke. I wasn't their daughter anymore. Not the reliable one. Not the backup plan. Not the one who fixed it all while they laughed in another room. They chose their story a long time ago. I just stopped reading it. And in this small borrowed living room wrapped in a fleece blanket that didn't match anything with takeout boxes half empty on the table, I realized something peace doesn't ask for attention. It just lets you breathe. The next morning, another text came in. You can't ignore us forever. But they were wrong. Because ignoring someone means you still hear them. And I didn't. Not anymore. I made coffee, opened a new tab on my laptop, typed in nursing programs, late applications. I wasn't trying to start over. I was just finally starting. They could keep spiraling, keep calling, keep rewriting the story. I wasn't part of it anymore. They said they didn't need me. So I gave them exactly that. If they ever made you feel like the quiet one was easier to lose, just leave a dot.